The battle for Kepler 442 lasted exactly 17 minutes. When it was over, the system's monitoring stations recorded something that had never happened before in galactic history: a complete devourer retreat. The entities that had consumed 300 star systems, that had destroyed the galaxy's greatest fleets, had fled from a single human task force. High Counselor Myra Lynn materialized in the command center of Galactic Station Prime, her ethereal form flickering with disbelief as she reviewed the battle recordings. "Show me again," she commanded. The tactical display activated, showing the Kepler 442 system as the Devourer scouts had approached it. 27 Devourer entities, each the size of a small moon, emerged from their consuming darkness into normal space. According to every simulation the Galactic Council had run, this force should have been able to eliminate any defensive fleet in the galaxy. Instead, they had encountered something no military strategist could have predicted. The humans had not tried to engage the Devourers in traditional space combat. They had turned the entire system into a trap. "Computer, highlight human defensive positions," Myra Lynn ordered. Red indicators began appearing throughout the system. Weapons platforms hidden in asteroid fields, missile launchers concealed in planetary rings, automated gun batteries drifting in the void, powered down and invisible until the moment they opened fire. "How many weapons platforms did they deploy?" asked General Thaxron, his four-armed form rigid with shock. "Over 50,000, came the reply from the tactical computer. "They spent 3 weeks converting every piece of space debris larger than a shuttle into a weapon." But the weapons platforms were only the beginning. As the Devourers had moved into the system, human ships had emerged from hiding places that should have been impossible. They had concealed entire battleships inside hollowed-out asteroids. They had buried destroyers beneath the surface of airless moons. They had even hidden a massive carrier inside the atmosphere of a gas giant. The humans call this strategy asymmetric warfare, reported Intelligence Director Colves, his tentacles trembling as he read from his data pad. Instead of meeting superior force with superior force, they use deception, misdirection, and overwhelming concentrated firepower at the moment of their choosing. The battle recording continued. As Devourer entities began consuming matter from the system's outer planets, the human trap had sprung. 50,000 weapons platforms had opened fire simultaneously, not with the precise measured attacks that galactic forces favored, but with everything they had, all at once. The space around the Devourers had become a storm of destruction, kinetic projectiles traveling at significant fractions of light speed, nuclear warheads that turned entire sections of space into miniature stars, particle beams that could cut through planetary cores, and weapons that the humans still refused to explain, but which seemed to cause the Devourers physical pain. "Look at this," General Thaxron said, pointing to a section of the recording. The humans targeted the areas where Devourers were actively consuming matter. They concentrated their fire on entities that were feeding. "That should not be tactically significant," Director Colves replied. "Devourers do not become more vulnerable while feeding." "But they do become predictable," Myra Lynn realized. "While they are consuming matter, they cannot easily change position. The humans treated them like prey animals caught feeding." The recording showed what happened next. As Devourer entities reeled from the concentrated human assault, human ships had emerged from concealment. But instead of maintaining safe distances and engaging with long-range weapons as galactic doctrine demanded, the human vessels had charged directly at the enemy. Ship after ship had rammed into Devourer entities at maximum velocity, their hulls packed with explosives. Pilots had manually guided their vessels into collision courses, their final transmissions picked up by monitoring stations throughout the system. "For Earth! Remember the colonies! Death before surrender!" "This is insane," General Thaxron whispered. "They are deliberately destroying their own ships." "Not destroying," Myra Lynn corrected, watching as human vessels erupted in nuclear fire inside Devourer entities. "Sacrificing," There is a difference. The tactic had worked. For the first time since the war began, Devourers had taken significant damage. More importantly, they had been forced to expend energy regenerating instead of consuming. And as they weakened, human attacks had intensified. The final phase of the battle had been the most shocking. As Devourer entities began to retreat, human pursuit vessels had followed them, small, fast ships that seemed designed for only one purpose, making sure the enemy could not escape unharmed. "Computer, analyze human pursuit tactics," Myralyn ordered. The human vessels followed retreating Devourer entities for 47 minutes beyond the system boundary, the computer reported. They continued attacking until their ammunition was exhausted and their fuel supplies were critically low. 17 human ships were lost when they deliberately overloaded their reactors while in contact with Devourer entities. The silence in the command center was absolute. Every military officer present understood what they had witnessed. Humans did not just fight to win, they fought to ensure their enemies could never threaten anything again. But the real shock came when reports arrived from other human-defended systems. Word of the Kepler 442 victory had spread through human communication networks, and the response had been immediate and terrifying. Human fleets throughout the galaxy had gone on the offensive. "They have abandoned all defensive positions," reported Admiral Zexaquali from his flagship at the edge of the neutral zone. "Human vessels are advancing directly into Devourer-controlled space." "That is suicide," General Thaxron protested. "They cannot possibly survive in territory the Devourers have consumed." Admiral Zexaquali's reply came with a tremor of fear in his voice. "They are not just surviving, General. They are hunting." The reports that followed painted a picture that no galactic strategist could have imagined. Human ships were penetrating deep into the dark zones where Devourers had consumed entire systems. But instead of fleeing when they encountered the enemy, they were attacking with a ferocity that defied understanding. Human tactical doctrine appears to be based on a concept they call total war, Intelligence Director Colvis reported during an emergency council session. Instead of seeking to minimize casualties and preserve resources, they are committing everything to complete enemy destruction. The recordings from human ship communications told the story, captain after captain reporting successful attacks against Devourer entities, ships running out of ammunition and then ramming their targets, crews setting their vessels to self-destruct while inside Devourer forms. Their final messages transmitted on open channels for their fellow humans to hear. They are not just fighting the Devourers, Myralyn realized with growing horror. They are teaching them fear. And it was working. For the first time since the war began, Devourer advance had not just stopped, it had reversed. Entities that had never retreated from anything were fleeing from human pursuit. Systems that had been consumed were being liberated as Devourers abandoned territory they could no longer hold. But the cost was becoming clear. Human casualties were astronomical by galactic standards. Ship after ship was lost to suicide attacks, ramming maneuvers, and deliberate self-destruction. Entire crews were dying to damage single Devourer entities. "They are losing ships at a rate 10 times higher than any galactic fleet," Admiral Zexaquali reported. "At this rate, they will exhaust their entire military force within a year." "But they are winning," General Thaxron replied grimly. "For every human ship lost, they are destroying or driving off multiple Devourer entities. The mathematics are in their favor." "The mathematics are insane," Director Colves protested. "No civilized species would accept such casualties." "That is exactly the point," Myralyn said quietly. "They are not civilized by our standards. They are something else entirely." The truth of this became apparent when human reinforcements began arriving from Earth. Instead of slowing their offensive as losses mounted, humans were accelerating their ship production. New vessels were arriving weekly, each one more advanced than the last as human engineers combined alien technology with their own innovations. But more disturbing were the crews. Every human ship was crewed by volunteers who knew the statistics, who understood that survival was unlikely, and who signed up anyway. They came from Earth singing songs about death and glory, carrying weapons blessed by their various gods, wearing armor decorated with symbols of their fallen comrades. "They have turned warfare into a religion," observed cultural analyst Pramar after reviewing human communication intercepts. "They speak of battle as sacred duty and death in combat as honor. They are not just fighting the Devourers, they are experiencing spiritual fulfillment through violence." The war began to turn decisively in the 6th month after human involvement. Devourer entities that had consumed matter for millions of years were encountering something they had never faced: prey that fought back with such ferocity that hunting them became more costly than profitable. Human fleets were penetrating to the heart of Devourer territory, following tactics that no sane species would attempt. They were using their own ships as bait to draw Devourers into ambushes. They were detonating stars to destroy Devourer gathering points. They were deploying weapons so destructive that even humans would only use them as last resorts. "The humans have developed what they call planet killers," reported Dr. Yil Andra from the Galactic Science Council. "Devices that can destabilize planetary cores. They are using them to deny the Devourers matter to consume." "They would destroy entire worlds to prevent enemy access?" General Thaxron asked in disbelief. "They prefer to call it scorched earth doctrine," Dr. Yilandra replied. "If they cannot hold territory, they ensure it cannot be used by the enemy. They would rather see a system become uninhabitable than allow Devourers to benefit from it." The final battle of the war came when human forces located the Devourer central mass, an entity the size of a star that had been consuming matter for eons. According to every simulation, attacking such a target would require the combined fleets of 100 worlds. The humans sent 12 ships. The vessels that approached the Devourer core were unlike anything seen before. Each ship was essentially a massive bomb with engines, crewed by volunteers who had undergone spiritual preparation for their final mission. They carried weapons that violated every treaty on warfare, including devices that could literally unmake matter at the quantum level. The attack lasted less than an hour. When it was over, the central mass that had coordinated Devourer attacks across the galaxy was gone. Without their guiding intelligence, the remaining entities scattered, fleeing into deep space beyond the galactic rim. The war was over. The victory celebration at Galactic Station Prime was unlike anything in recorded history. Representatives from 1,000 worlds gathered to honor the species that had saved galactic civilization. But as the ceremonies proceeded, it became clear that the galaxy's relationship with humanity would never be normal. "They have requested permission to establish permanent military bases throughout galactic space," High Counselor Myra Lynn announced. "For security purposes." "And if we refuse?" asked Ambassador Yul Mora. Myra Lynn looked out at the human fleet stationed just outside the station, hundreds of scarred, battle-hardened vessels crewed by beings who had just demonstrated they could defeat anything in the galaxy. "I do not think refusal is an option," she replied. The galaxy had called for help from the Deathworlders. The Deathworlders had answered, and in doing so, they had changed everything. Humanity had saved galactic civilization, but in the process, they had become something the galaxy had never seen before: the ultimate apex predator. As human ships took up permanent positions throughout civilized space, their crews singing ancient war songs and maintaining weapons that could crack planets, every species in the galaxy understood a new reality. They were no longer alone in the universe. They were under human protection. And that was either the best news or the most terrifying news the galaxy had ever received.